Okay, we are starting. We're up to the fifth shir, I think, in the Hilchos of Halachos of Chanukah. We're up to Sif Yud. So what I want to do today is I want to finish the whole thing. That's why we're starting first with halacha, because I want to make sure that we go through the whole sugya, and that we're able to finish everything that we need to do. So Sif Yud in the Kitzur Zman ad lakasan. So now we're starting with the time of when is the appropriate time to light the menorah. 1 second, let me just get everyone in here. Okay. Zman ad lakasa, when is the appropriate time that we should be lighting the menorah? So the halacha is miyad b'tzeis hakechav. So in halacha it says the real time is when it's actually night, when the stars come out. Now, if you look on the bottom, so on the bottom it brings our minhag, and the minhag is u'minagenu lahadlik bein mincha l'maydev. Our minhag is that we light the menorah after mincha, which is before tzeis hakechav, but it's after shkia. And the Rebbe writes, excuse me, it's say from Menagim that our minhag is that we light them for at least 50 minutes, misakfim samuch lenedes kechatzi shah, and we hang out by the menorah for a half hour, levad me'erev Shabbos, except for erev Shabbos, and you don't hang out there. Now, first of all, why do we hang out there for a half hour? So the shear that it has to be lit for is a half hour. And over there, some people say, a so interesting thing once where it says that you don't have rishos, right? You're not allowed to use the candles. Ella, right? You're not allowed to use them except to look at them. So some people say, what does it mean except to look at them? That you're supposed to sit there and look at them during that half hour. The half hour that you're not allowed to use them for anything else, you should be able to sit there and look at it. Okay. Even after that half hour, there are people, technically you could use the candles for anything because the Zman is over. But it looks like some people would say you still shouldn't use it, to do mundane things, count your money or whatever, but you could use it to learn or stuff like that. Well, I guess you could use that, yeah, either way. But you have a shamash anyway, so that will cover that. So the point is like this. So our minhag is to light this already earlier, which is after mincha, closer, which is after shkia, after you finish mincha. But the actual halacha would be really tzeis hakechav. Now, you shouldn't push it off. Like any other mitzvah, you have an opportunity to do it as soon as you could. The earlier you do it, the better it is, because it's a precious mitzvah. Now, because it's like any of these other precious mitzvahs that we have, shofar, lulav, all these things, so the halacha is, you're not allowed to do anything before you actually light it. I feel even to learn Torah. You're not supposed to do anything before, because this is the mitzvah that you have to do now. So it's required that you should do it right away. Now, one second, we'll come to that in a second. If you didn't daven ma'ariv, right? So now it's after tzeis, and you didn't daven ma'ariv yet. So then the halacha would be yispal tchila. First, you should daven ma'ariv because it's tadir kedim. You do the one that you're more used to, that's more common. So you daven ma'ariv first, and then you would light the candles after. Now, if you have a set minyan, let's say sometimes people have a minyan, they always daven ma'ariv at 9 o'clock at night. So then, even though it's after tzeis, you could light first, and you'll daven with your regular minyan later. Now, the koydim sheyadik, before you light the candles, yikabetz kol b'nei beisa, you should gather your family together. Everyone should watch. The reason is the persumini, so you want to publicize the miracle that happened. That's the main part of the nes of the Yom Tov, rather, is the persuminisa element of it. So you should gather everyone together. When you put the oil in, you have to make sure that there's enough oil to last you at least a half hour. Right now, if you our minhag would be more than a half hour. Our minhag would be that you want to have, like we said on the bottom, that should be at least 50 minutes. Now, why is that? Because, as we said, there are some people who say that really the lighting of the menorah should really be after tzeis hakechav, and we're lighting it early. We're lighting it by shkia. So shkia is about a half hour or so, a little bit less, before tzeis hakechav. So you want to make sure that to satisfy both all the all the things. All the opinions, so you want to have enough oil that it should last from when you light it to at least cover the half hour after tzeis hakechav also. So we do it in that way, and this way it could come. Let's get discussing again.
We're gonna make 50 minutes, make 50
Yeah,
minutes, to last us 30 minutes after,
That's-
stays.
right.
But did you say that in between stays to ski is 30 minutes?
But it's not really. It depends on the time of year. Right now it's less. Right now it's 25 or so. You could check. It's around 20 minutes.
I need 30 minutes after stays.
Yeah, 25 and a half hours. How much? It's 55. Okay, whatever.
I have a question. 45 is
From Shkia till Tseis is about 25 minutes.
Right.
And
So,
then
right.
35 minutes. And then 30 minutes.
Minutes.
no, it's 45. He said it's 55.
Okay.
Remember?
Oh.
Yeah.
I missed all the time.
Oh, it's
We didn't get there yet. Yeah.
You're not allowed to learn before.
Wait, we'll cover that in a second.
I'm Charles to learn.
Wait, we'll cover that in a second. We'll get to it in a second. Where are we up to now?
We're
Simikuf Lamites, we're middle of Sifyud. I'm going to get to you. I'll get to what you asked in a second. Okay. Now, let's say a person forgot to light right away, like you just asked. So you didn't light it the earliest time possible. So so as long as people are awake in your house, that anytime you light, you could still make a bracha. But once the people in your house are sleeping, so su leker persumi nisa, then there's no persumi nisa anymore, and therefore v'yadik b'lei bracha. You should light without a bracha. So basically, like this: if you're going to come back late from a tzayim and there's other people that are awake together with you, then you light with the bracha without a concern. If you're living in in a place where everyone else is sleeping when you come home, so either you can wake someone up. If it's a quiet town, you wake someone up. If there's no one ever home, meaning you live alone, so then you can light with a bracha the same way you light every other night with a bracha, even if it's earlier in the day. But also nowadays, because people are up much later than they used to be, because we have lights and things like that, so people stay up till much later, especially if you're in a big city. There's plenty of poskim that say that as long as people are awake outside, you could still light with a bracha. When are people awake till outside? So some people stay up till about midnight. So usually you're not gonna run into this issue. But if you do live in a place where other people live with you in your house and it is after that time, then you should wake someone up if you want to bench with a bracha. Yeah. What were you going to say? Yeah.
It's one person to wake up.
Yeah. Just one person is enough. Okay, so now let's talk about some of those things. So you're not allowed to do a lot of things, like we mentioned, even learning, eating, all these types of things you're not supposed to do from the Zman, from Shkia, until you light. Now, the truth is that time actually starts from a half hour before. From already before, like other mitzvahs, like let's say b'dikas chametz, you're supposed to stop doing things from already a time before. So already about a half hour before, you should be stopping to do some of these things. Now, look, if you're learning about the halachas of Chanukah, you're allowed to do it. Just like when it comes to b'dikas chametz, if you're learning the halachas of b'dikas chametz. So if you're doing that, then it's no problem. Also, if you ask someone to remind you that you didn't light yet, so then for sure you could learn. Sleeping is a little bit more complicated. Taking a nap, like we'll see later in the Gemara and Sukkah, that even taking a small nap is already a problem. So we'll get there later. So naps is a little bit more of an issue, but if you ask someone to wake you up, maybe that can work as well from a half hour before. Eating, so this is a common thing because people go mitzvayim and you come home too late and people are very hungry and they want to eat. So the basic answer is like this. The issue with eating is a meal, which means eating bread more than the shear of a suda, which is more than a kazayas or something, a kabeya, sorry, or and washing basically. But to eat like fruits that we call shahakal, very priyadam, eat stuff, and even mezainis, if you're eating not the type of mezainis that you'll be kaveya seuda on. So let's say donuts, you could eat donuts. Other types of mezainis, if you're only eating a little bit, there's really no issue. There's really no issue to eat that before you light the Neir Chanukah. I did see somewhere where they say that there are some people that they try to be makbid not to eat anything. So I don't know what to answer. Someone would say, well, can I eat them of tzayim? Halachically, there's no problem with eating snacks, donuts, what do you call it, latkes, things like that. There's definitely no issue. There are some that are a little bit machmer, that they would try not to eat anything before, and like not drink, not do anything. So what I would tell someone, if a bach goes on Meftzayim and they're afraid they're going to get back late and they're going to be hungry, tell someone to remind you that you're going to light later, and then you could have these snacks and stuff like that. That's what I think. Until I hear otherwise, I think that would be the case. 1 second. This idea, someone actually asked the Rebbe about when we light, because we light a bit earlier. So the Rebbe said, look, Friday, we're for sure lighting before Shkia. So to say that that it's better that you could only light after Shkia and before it says for sure not, because we see Friday by Shkia for sure we're lighting. And even Plaga Mincha, really Plaga Mincha is the earliest time that you could already start lighting. I'm just see if he gets there later. So really, from Plaga Mincha, technically you could, and Shul they already light already by much earlier than Shkia. They're running by Plaga Mincha already. So public menorah lightings all happen usually by after Plaga Mincha time. You could already do that. In your house, it's not ideal. You should really wait till Shkia. So if you want to light early because you're traveling or something like that, so it's not so simple. Let's say someone says, well, if I go on Mitzrayim, I either have a choice to light before Shkia, basically after Plaga Mincha, or much later when I get home. So the answer would really be, it's probably better to light much later when you get home, better than to light earlier before Plaga Mincha. But if you're traveling and you're not going to have a chance, so until maybe after midnight, I don't know, whenever you're going to get there. So either you might lose the bracha or light after Plaga Mincha, then light after Plaga Mincha before Shkia, and that obviously would be better. Yeah.
Theoretically, I'm going on a plane at 4 o'clock. And I'm landing at 11. I can't eat from like halfway through the plane. Like I'm not 11 o'clock. I'm landing in a state where it's 2 hours ahead.
You're landing later in the.
Yeah.
So right. So from the time that you're supposed to be lighting, so you would have to either you could snack a little bit, and ideally ask someone to remind you to light later.
Why?
And then you could snack. But what does snack mean? Snack means everything besides for washing and having a kabeya. So you could eat. Meaning if you need, you can eat. I would suggest if you're on a plane, eat before, and then by the time because 4 is before Plaga Mincha. I think 4:23. I think is Plaga Mincha, if I'm not mistaken. So you have 25 minutes or a little bit less to have a little bit of whatever you need. And then how long is the flight already? A couple hours, 3-4 hours. Okay, so ask someone to remind you. Ask someone to remind you that you're going to light the menorah later, and then you could do that. He was waiting. I think I
have a very similar question. Something at 6:45. My flight's 6:45.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And his flight's also at 7.
Okay.
So we want is there what time is like an issue before it's generally not before that time it's past the flight of info.
So Shkia, from Shkia is when is the time that it would be better not to eat. But again, ask someone to remind you. Shkia is 5. It should be about 5:20 or so, give or take, a couple of minutes. So ask someone to remind you that you're going to light later, and then you could. And snacks you could eat. Snacks you could eat. You could eat snacks.
Exactly.
Yes, sure. You could eat snacks. Yeah, you can eat snacks.
Any time before lighting.
Yeah, you could eat snacks. As long as you're not washing and having a big soda, you could eat all these snacks. Again, there are some people that are machmir not to, but I don't know that that's something you have to do. Yeah. What is the significance? So part of why we don't want you to do certain things is so part of the reason is because we don't want that. What happens is you get delayed. You start a meal and then the meal drags on. Or the other things in halacha mentioned that you take a haircut or you sit down by the barber or a tailor or something like that. Tailor was a thing then, now it's not a thing. But let's say a barber. Basically, these were things that you would sit down to do and you might get carried away. So they would say, don't start it because the first thing you have to do is the mitzvah. Now, if you ask someone to remind you, so then we won't forget. So it's okay. That's basically the how it works. But snacks were never really included in that. So there are some people that say, there are some people that say same thing like shofar in the morning and lulav, that we try not to eat anything before we do the mitzvah if you could. So they would say the same thing for this. So fine, that is something, but I don't think it's as strict. It's a little bit less. It's only it's a midrabanan. It's not like hearing shofar, which I guess is also a little bit midrabanan, as we'll see later in the whatever, depends. But not necessarily. I'm not sure. I remember seeing somewhere where it said reminder on the phone might not. I'm not sure.
What?
I'm not sure. Listen, reminders don't always work. I mean, people also don't always remember, but reminders, you get a lot of buzzes and you forget them. I don't know. But what I recall, I think it's specifically asking someone. I remember if I recall correctly. Could be I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember seeing someone that alarms wouldn't help me. They're not ideal. Ask someone else. That's the big deal, huh? Okay, but I want to continue. Yeah.
Who should I ask? I'm in the flight. That's what you think I should ask.
No, before you leave. You text, you have your phone, you text your parents, whatever it is, and just say, remind me when I come that I still have to light menorah.
When I get home or when I'm on the plane?
No, when you get home, remind me, text them before that remind me when I get home that I still have to light menorah. Okay, I want to go further, yes?
That's absolutely
What?
You're asking through a phone.
No, because it's a person on the other end. Okay, let's go further. Let's go further. That's okay. As long as there's a person that's responsible to remind you, it's okay. Okay, but either way, let's go. We got the idea. Let's go further. Let's see where we are. Okay. Now, let's say a person like a lot of you guys are mentioning. Let's say you're not going to have time to light that night at all. So you guys are landing when you could still light. But let's say you're going to land in a place where it's too late. So someone actually asked me today, or a couple of days ago, they're leaving here in the afternoon, and they're going to Europe or somewhere on that side of the pond. So they're landing tomorrow morning. That means that they're going to be on the plane. They're literally losing the entire night. So what do they do? So that's a good question. Here, he's not talking about that. Wait 1 second. Here, well, so I'll get to that in a second. But here he's not saying that. Here he's saying is that you're leaving after Plag. So you could light from Plaga Mincha. This guy was leaving 1 or 2 in the afternoon. It's a long flight because it's like what is it? From here it would be almost like 10 hours or something or more, and then plus they're 7 hours ahead. So you might just lose the whole thing. But here the guy was leaving after Plaga Mincha. So you could already light from Plaga Mincha in that situation. This would be about an hour and a quarter before Tzeisek Echavim, right? Plaga Mincha means half of Mincha. So it's half the time between Mincha Ktana, which is 2.5 hours. So it's an hour and a quarter before Nacht. This would be obviously Shazmanias, which means not 60 minutes on the clock, but the way the hours are divided by the size of the day, which would be Chanukah during the times of Chanukah, which is in the winter, the days are very short. So therefore, it would be very little. If the day is only 10 hours, Ur is the sha'on, is the clock. So let's say that it gets light at about 7 and it gets dark at about 5, which is about what we have now. So it's about 10 hours. So Azai Plaga Mincha minutim v'chetzi. He gives you the math of how to do it. Obviously, you'll look at a calendar and you'll see whatever it says. But as we mentioned before, similar to what the Rebbe said, that you have to have excuse me, enough oil that it should last for at least a half hour after Tzeisek Echavim. So similar to what we said before. You made him dolken kach, and if it won't last that long, like a mitzvah, you didn't do the mitzvah. So you have to make sure that you're at least covering your base there. Yeah.
Why do you like and at night and all during the day, like by Rosh Hashanah you start during the day. But sometimes to do during the day, by Shavuos we do start service during the day. Is it because we're lighting up night?
So right, you got that. It's a good question. In fact, the question is even bigger because in the Beis Hamikdash they actually lit it by day, right? So in the Beis Hamikdash, you actually lit it by day. So that's even a bigger question. Okay, but the main thing is because Persumei Nisa, the whole thing is that you want people to see, and it says in the Gemara that candles are not seen by day. So we don't light it by day. Okay, but that's
Oh yeah.
okay, let's go further. Sif Yud Aleph. Seder Ad Lakasan. Okay, so now it should go a bit easier. What's the order of how we light the menorah? Kafimin again, the way we do it is Balayla Rishon.
I have a question. If he's jealous, maybe you can ask a question.
I just asked the question that he mentioned from.
Okay. Sif Yud Aleph, let's go. Seder Ad Lakasan Kafimin again, the way we do it is like this. Balayla Rishon, the first night of Chanukah, Madlik Haner Shekeneged Yamina, you start on your right side. You always start mitzvahs on your right side. Balayla Hasheni, on the second night, Meisiv Olav Ner Keneged Smoilei, the second night you're going to add a new candle, which is going to be the candle on the left. And every day you're going to add another candle. The one that you add is the one that you're going to light first. And you continue going. Now, why do you do that if as we just said, all mitzvahs start from the right? So the reason is because if you want to show that you're doing a hisafa, you're adding every single night, then the one that you're going to light is the one that you added. The first one was there from before. So you start from the right side, but the new one that's going to show that every night you're adding another candle is the one on the left. So that's the one that you're going to light first every single night. Okay? Good. Yud base. What? Why do we do two on the left hand? Oh, that's another thing. That's because in the Torah it says Yodcha, which is Yad Keh, your weaker hand, so you put on your left hand, Kneged Alev, whatever. That's a separate thing. But also, why do you tie? And that's the same reason why you tie your shoes left first. You tie your left shoe first because the only thing we tie in the Torah is basically tefillin, and tefillin is on your left hand, so we tie our left shoe first. But you put on your right shoe first because that's the seder how you put the right things first. Yeah.
Like the thing to the really famous question, like, oh, why is there eight nights of tefillin? We're going to for 7 nights. Because one night was for like the third day, so like I remember one of these was that's first day, the first night you run right like the flight, so like window was like that. So if it's doing that, why do we light the first candle? We should have like a then where you block and dirt with the whole part of lighting nerves to make the
So it's a good question. I don't know. There's a bunch of different things. There's a bunch of different reasons. I don't want to. There's a whole bunch of different reasons. So we'll leave that for now. Yeah.
So how the order is that if it's on like the fourth night, I'll light the fourth, go that way, and then I'm working my way back.
It's the fourth night, so then you fill up your whole. Let's say you start from you do 1, 2, 3, 4, right, and then you start lighting the most left one first, and then then 3, then 2, then 1. So you're starting with you don't go back to 1. You start with the newest one, and then you work your way slowly backwards. So it's 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, Yud Beis. 60 base. We do 3 brachas on the first night. Number 1, lahadlik. Which is lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Number 2, shas nisim, and number 3, shechianu. Now we do ner, even though on the second night and on we're lighting more than 1 candle. So really, you should say lahadlik neiros shel Chanukah. But we still say ner. So number 1, because we mentioned in the past that the ikar mitzvah is really only 1 candle. So you're really making a bracha on the mitzvah. The hiddur that we add more, we're not making a bracha on that necessarily. There's also some Rosh Tevis that come into it that ner, I don't know, something, but we'll leave that for now. 1 second. Now, the rest of the night you don't say shechianu unless you didn't light the first night. So if you go on Mitzvayim and you meet someone who didn't light yet on the 5th night, then they'll say with all 3 brachas. Now, after you make the brachas, so you start lighting. Now, according to the Kitzur, we don't paskin like this, but they say they already start saying Anedis Alalu while they're in the middle of lighting. So if you go to someone else that's Chabad, you'll notice that while the guy's still in the middle of lighting his candles, they already start singing Anedis Alalu. We don't do that. So the Alter Rebbe says that we wait until you finish lighting all the candles and then you do Anedis Alalu. And the reason is very simple. That if the bracha is supposed to go on all the candles that you just lit. So why would you start singing and making some sort of hafsik before you finish lighting them? You first finish all of them. Now, what about a ger? So, in other words, he can't say sha'asa nisim la'aviseinu because it wasn't aviseinu. So, ger emer sha'asa nisim li'yisrael. He would say sha'asa nisim li'yisrael, but v'im amar la'aviseinu yatsa. If he says aviseinu, then he's yetza. I've never seen a separate nusach, so I think at this point in time, I think everyone just says sha'asa nisim la'aviseinu. Now, what about if Rahman al someone lost someone very close to them and they haven't been buried yet? So usually you don't do any mitzvahs, or at least not with brachas. You don't daven, you don't do anything like that. So then, if there's someone else, someone else should light it, make the brachas, and he should say amen. That's the best way to do it. But if there's no one else there, so so he should light himself, but he can't make the brachas because when he's in einin, you're not allowed to make any brachas. Yeah. What? How could he say? He could say amen.
But is it amen to that?
Okay, whatever. He says amen. 1 second.
And also,
sorry. I don't think so. But we'll keep that. I don't think so. Okay, we asked someone else to make. I'm not sure. He doesn't do it. Okay, Sify Gimel, yeah.
One West Patrol has like relative limit or something. Like what do they do?
Okay, let's leave that for now. But I don't believe there would be an Ein B'chal. Aninas is only really the Ikar is only for the first day. I think after that it loosens up. But let's leave it for now. You have sometimes people that they get buried in Eretz Yisrael also. Let's say so it can end up being. But whatever, we'll leave that for now. We're not getting to those halachos. Yeah.
But the other way should be seen after because situation is going with all the okay.
That the bracha goes in all of them. Yeah.
So why don't the other Michigan move like that?
Good question. They hold it so that you see this in other places also. For example, on Shabbos, after Friday night, right before Shemoneh Esrei. So people say there's a special bracha that's actually, it's not a bracha, it's psukim that are actually put into the siddur. It's v'shamri. And on Yom Tovim you say it also. Well, it's not engraved. In the Siddurim it's engraved, but it's v'shamru and v'yidaber tiku. You say different things in Yom Tovim. Now the Alter Rebbe put it in the siddur, famously put it in the siddur, but we don't say it. So why did the Alter Rebbe put it in the siddur? So there's a whole thing once, right? Exactly. There's a whole thing that I think Yisrael Bardishav asked him, and I think the Alter Rebbe said that basically when you say b'shamru, there's a big marketplace above where the malachim are singing with the yidden and dancing, and it's a beautiful thing. So the Alter Rebbe felt very close to this tefillah. So then why don't you say it? So his response was, Nishlev yader yirid darf menged. You don't have to go to every single marketplace. So there's a marketplace with malachim, but parallel it's still a hafsik. So you do see that other times there are people that say things in the middle of specific places where it might be considered a hafsik, but they don't consider it a hafsik because it's part of the tefillah, it's part of the nusach. Fine, but the Alter Rebbe was more meduyik in his seder of how he organized whatever, and is more sensitive to the idea, I guess, of a hafsik. So he doesn't put it in. We don't say it. Yeah, I want to. Yeah. Okay, right there. Yud Gimel. And Kaimalan, we learn, and we mentioned this before, that hadlaka oisa mitzvah, the actual lighting, when you make the flame, that's when the mitzvah is done. Pirush, what does that mean? That hadlaka hiya mitzvah, the actual lighting it is when you fulfill the mitzvah. And therefore, b'shas hadlaka tzrikan dias and nedis b'kemaro. So when you actually light them, they need to be in a place that's already kosher, meaning that, and vikashir haro, and it has to have the right amount of oil, the right amount of fuel that's going to last you for the whole half hour or 50 minutes, according to our, well, I guess half hour minimum. La fuki, what's this excluding? What would be not an okay presentation? That let's say you lit it below 3 tvachim from the ground, which, as we mentioned, is pasul. Or taller than 20 amis, which, as we mentioned, is pasul. And later, after they were already lit, you then go and you move it to its correct place. Then it's pasul. Why would it be pasul? Because you lit it in the wrong place, and that is when the mitzvah was done. Also, if you didn't have enough fuel to last you for that amount of time, and then you added more fuel later, also it's also not going to be kosher. And this was one of the reasons, as you remember, we mentioned why we don't really like to use an electric menorah. So one of the reasons, there's a bunch of reasons of how it's not similar to mamish the nes, but one of the things is because it doesn't have fuel. You have the electric company that's producing, they constantly produce electricity, and it's being produced on the go, right? So because it's being produced on the go, it's not going to be, it wasn't there originally. Now, battery operated is better, so it's one step up. If someone has a choice what to do, so they can't use a real flame, they're in, chas v'shalom in a prison, or if they're in a hospital, maybe for good things, they had a baby. So then again, you have to go with what you're allowed to do in the best order. So in that case, if there's no lighting for them at home, then maybe they should do with a battery operated would be better than to plug it in. Either way, you might not make a bracha, as we mentioned then. But okay, now the interesting thing over here, if you take a look at Sif Tes on the bottom, so it says like this: So this is brought down in Sefer Menhagim, I believe, that the Rebbe says that there was a time that the Frierdiker Rebbe was unwell, and what they did was they brought the menorah to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe lit it with a bracha, and then they put it where it's supposed to be. But over there, it wasn't in a makom psul, meaning it wasn't on the floor, it wasn't within 3 tvachim of the floor, it was next to him on the bed or wherever he was, and he was able to light it with the bracha, and then they were able to move it back. So as long as it's in a kosher space originally, so then it would be okay to light it there and then to move it later, as long as it was in a kosher spot in the beginning as well. Now, so now the halacha would continue along the same lines and say like this: let's say the place where you put it was a very windy place, and there was no question that this is not going to last a half hour. It's windy. You ever see, we used to go in Manhattan, and you'd always have a couple of never homeless people would come over and they would drive you crazy. And so they would get candles, they would take or whatever, and then eventually you'd see they lit little candles. I don't know if they were trying to keep them warm. I don't know. It was New York. It was kind of cold, but there's no question those candles didn't last more than a few minutes. It's windy unless they covered it, whatever. So if you light it in a place that there's no way that it's going to last that long, lo kima mitzvah, you didn't do the mitzvah, even though you lit it and it was on fire when you did it. And we said the ikr mitzvahs in the beginning. And you'll have to light it a second time. But you don't make a bracha a second time. So if you lit it in a place and you made a bracha, and this place is not a place that the fire is going to last, it's too windy, you are not yotzin, you have to relight it, but you don't make another bracha. But let's say you put it in a place that was a proper place, but then because of something that happened, it went out. So let's say someone came and brought a fan and suddenly faced it on your candles and it went out. So you did what was right. You lit it in the right place with the right amount of oil at the right time. So kvar kima mitzvah, you fulfilled the mitzvah. So you did it right, but it went out. So mikamakayim, the minig is officially you don't have to relight the menorah. It's done. You did it right. You lit it with the right amount of oil in the right place, and it wasn't threatened. Everything was wonderful. But because the oil went out for some reason, so noyagin, there's a minig shechoyzer madlikon that we like to go and light it again, but you don't have to. We also have a minig. Obviously, we don't like to use one candle to light another candle because there are some days that say you could because you're not using the candle for something else. You're using it to light literally another menorah. But still, we don't like to do that. We like to use either the shamish or from a random flame somewhere else. We don't like to use that. Now, if you look in the bottom, where it says Yud, this is our minig of the way that we would do this. That if you lit it in the way that you should, and it went out, so you were makuyim the mitzvah, but we like to light it again. And then he also says, Achar shir's mandli kase, after it was already burning for a half hour, then metaltlanas hamenayra, then you can move it, v'gamas hanedes dolkim adayim, even if they're lit. In other words, we're not afraid that it might be put out. During the first half hour, you shouldn't really move them, you should have them in the right place. But let's say later you want to move it to the floor or to somewhere where it could, get put out or whatever it is, it's fine, because it was already burning for the correct shear. Okay, Sif Yud Dalid. So Sif Yud Dalid. Kozman mitzvason. The entire time that there is the mitzvah of the candles, the Hainu Chatzi Shah, which basically means a half hour that the candles are lit. Asur lehanes me'edan. You're not allowed to have benefit from the candles, even though generally they say mitzvah slav lehanes nitnu, but you're not allowed to have benefit from them, like we said before. That ein later shus lishtamesh behem. So if you look in your Aleph on the bottom, it says the Achar's manzet. What about after the half hour? So then, oisin malacha shaloi connected aneda. If you could do, meaning even women who are machmir not to do malacha during that time, they could already continue to do malachas after that half hour, even though the candles are already lit. But connecton nechluku amachaber v'rasha. However, if to do those malachas in front of the candles, where the candles can see keilu, so then already there's a machlik. It's not so pashut that you should do malach in front of the candles, even if it's after the half hour. But we don't have a clear shitta, as the Rebbe, as this quote in Sefer Menagim, we don't have a clear shitta of what we do. So each their own. But again, what are you really going to do? Do the laundry? You're not going to do the laundry, I guess, if your menorah is in a place where it could see. Okay, but it looks like it's not such a big deal. If that's what you want to do after the shear that it needed to be lit, it was already lit for, then it would be okay. So he says this is the main reason why we put a shamish next to the menorah. Because if someone does do something that is benefiting from the light of the menorah, they'll be using the light of the shamish, which you're allowed to use. However, you have to put the shamish a little bit higher. It should be clear and obvious that it's not the same as the regular candles. This is also one of the reasons why we mentioned that we do a candle instead of the oil, for the same reason, to show that it's different. Now, if you look in the bottom, Yud Beis, so over there it says, that's our meaning, that we put the candle of the shamash a little bit higher. And even if it's during the day, let's say you light your menorah, plaga mincha and shul. So if you light your menorah, plaga mincha and shul, it's still light outside. So no one's, even if whatever light you use, you're not using the light of the candles. But nevertheless, we still put a shamish there for whatever reason it is. Now, we said that already, but women is brought in our the Luch Chabad, but it's our minig as well that ladies don't do malacha while the candles are lit, which we mentioned already before. Now, this would be, even though we spoke about this before, even though nowadays there's actual lights, and therefore any room where you have your menorah, you're not really using the menorah lights. Nevertheless, we still don't do malacha. We still don't use those candles to do anything, and we still light a shamish. Why are you lighting a shamish if you have a light in your house? Obviously, the light in your house is going to be much more effective. But nevertheless, we still don't light the shamish, even though you have electric lights. And there's reasons why that basically it's similar to the Kohen Gadol that used to light the menorah. He was standing on top of it, and the Malachim, it says that Srafim Imdim Mimale, that they stand on top of it. Okay, either way, there's an idea of why we want to use the shamish, even though you're going to have lights inside your room that are going to be on. Yeah.
Turn off for dim your lights for the same reason I was saying the other night. Should should that candle shine brighter at night, like that?
I'm not sure what you're asking. You could do it. Sure, if you want to, you could. Obviously,
Your lights should turn them off here.
Can you? You could. I'm not sure what the question is. What do you?
Be considered shamish, being like a
You have to have a shamish anyway. So yeah, you can use those lights. Either way, if you're using the lights, you can't use the lights, the candles. I don't know what I'm not sure what you're. Okay, well, yeah. Yes, that's why we like the shamish. So in case you're using the lights to read. Okay. I understand. Yeah, it's a similar. You're right, but once you don't need the candles because you have a separate candle, so it's already considered as if you're not using it, even though in some way you are. But either way, nowadays we use regular lights anyways. Yeah, you had a question?
Yeah, what's the whole idea of this? How do I
That's what we just said, because you don't want, there's a few reasons. One is that it's similar to the Kohen Gadol. You used to use one to light the rest of them. So you want to make our menorah similar to what used to happen in the base of Mikdash.
That makes sense.
But the main reason is because, as we said, that you don't want to use you don't have benefit from the candles. So if you don't want to have benefit from the candles, so you put a shamash, and in case you use the candles for any reason, then the benefit that you're having is really from there. So for example, if I told you once I had a menorah that always melted, the shamash always got messed up, always melted. So what I would do is you could either borrow someone else's shamash, or you don't need a shamash.
So if the whole idea is that we don't want, so if we use the lights for like personal benefit and stuff like that, then we have the shop. Once we use the shop, too.
You're allowed to use the shamash. What do you mean?
Everybody.
Yeah, the shamash you're allowed to use. It's not one of the candles. It's a separate candle. You're allowed to use, exactly. Okay, Tezvav.
You lich.
Now, madliki neides bebeis haknesses mishum persumei nisa. We also light the menorah in shul. Now, technically, why are you lighting the menorah in shul? You light a menorah in your house. Ishu beisai. There, ishu beisai. That's what the Gemara says. The reason why we light it in shul is for another reason, what we call persumei nisa. So why are you lighting in a shul? There's a separate reason why we light it in a shul. Separate reason why we light in the show, which is basically pursuing Nisa, because you want to publicize the miracle that happened. So the more people that see it, the more people know what happened. And therefore, you make a bracha on it. Now, really, the halacha is that if you only make a bracha when you have a minyan of people. So ideally, any of these public menorahs, you're supposed to have 10 people there. Now, I did see somewhere that 10 people doesn't have to be 10 men. It could be 10 men, women, because the idea is pursuing nisa. The idea is not a minyan. It's not a davar shebekdusha. However, I saw somewhere that even if you don't have a minyan, you could still make a bracha if you're doing it in public, because also people will come later and see. So, okay, but ideally, try to have at least 10 people if you're doing a public menorah, and you're not being yetzer from that one because you have to light in your house anyways. So try to have people there. Now, you put it in the daram side, in the southern side of the wall of the shul. And you light it in between mincha and ma'ariv, like we said before. Now, however, no one is yetzer from this. This is not a kosher lighting, and therefore, I think that Rebbe once mentioned that it would be a good thing if they announced by the public lightings that everyone should light later when they get home. Then everyone who's there has to go and light again at home. Even the person who lit the public one and made the bracha, they have to do it again. But if someone is in Avil, he should not be the one to light the first night in Shul. Why? Because one of the three brachas is Shechayanu. Someone who's sitting Shiva, who's in Avil rather, should not say Shechayanu with the minyan. They should, at home they could do it, but not there. So they shouldn't be the one to do that. Okay. Yeah, so let me just. Okay, so let's stop here, and we'll come back after.